morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the Beach Management Committee meeting. A few announcements before we get started. First, I'd like to introduce our new Executive Director, Jay Tusa. Jay came on board first of the month. Welcome him into our arena. So, if you'll get a chance, if you haven't met him, introduce yourself personally. With that, we'll get started. So, John, we'll get started.
Okay, first item, call to order. We do have a quorum, so first item is, does the public have any comments on our agenda? See any other comments? We go right to the approval of last month's minutes. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to accept it as they are.
Second. Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, Matt, you want to give us an update on the hurricane and storm damage reduction project?
Sure. No major update on the HSDR. The last time we met was right before the BCC meeting, March 8th, I believe. I think most of y'all are aware that the action the BCC took. I just want to give you a quick recap. John, I think you may have missed that meeting. But so the final easement numbers and all this information is up on the website if y'all want to go grab it. The maps that the Corps of Engineers had prepared showing what easements were received, what weren't, or what was yes and what was no. We received, it was a little over 1,000 parcels. It was quite confusing, the parcels versus the individual property owners, multiple family units. So we divided it amongst parcels. If all of the easements for the particular parcel were not received, or if it was a mixed bag, they were simply a no. So looking at the parcels, we received about 50% response back on those. Of that 50%, about 87.5% were not in favor of the easement, and 12.5% were in favor of the easement. We reported that to the BCC. The Corps of Engineers had some concerns regarding the viability of the project, how it was so segregated. We basically had a sawtooth of yes and no's, and primarily no's on the easement response. So they were left with very little options. So they had chose to table the project at the March 8th meeting. Following that, we also had the invitation to bid for the vibra coring and the offshore borrow site to assess the sand quality. Seeing the HSDR project was tabled, they chose to reject all bids and table that ITB as well. And then I gave a brief summary of the DEP permits that were to be received. Now those were deemed complete almost a year ago, or shortly over a year ago, and the Corps of Engineers had been delaying the issuance because if the project turned out to be one less reach, or if we were to modify the project, reduce some properties, we wouldn't want to go ahead and have the permit issued and then have to modify it and go along those paths. So basically the Corps kept delaying the issuance, and again, given the easement response and their conversations with the state that said if the county did so choose to go forward with the project, all the environmental assessment had been done, they could issue a permit within approximately 60 days. So the Corps just decided to withdraw the permit. So all those assessments have been done, but they're on the state side basically just tabled. So in essence, the entire project has been tabled. Now, we had some questions from the commissioners at the meeting, and this is going back to March 8th, as to how are we prepared for a severe storm event, and I was as honest as I could be and basically said that we aren't very well prepared. We don't have a severe storm plan. The beach restoration was our proactive approach for managing our shorelines. So we're really between a rock and a hard place, and that has shifted us more into a reactive approach. And as we've gone back and discussed more with the Corps of Engineers, if there is in fact a hurricane, they're going to have to redo their assessments. They're going to have to redo the cost analysis, redo the design, resubmit those permit applications. So nothing is going to happen quickly if there is a major storm event this summer or this fall. So it puts us in a very tough situation. We've been, in our office, we've been going back and looking at some potential options. The Corps of Engineers have done all of their assessments on the environmental side, the Endangered Species Act, Section 7 consultations, the birds and turtles issues, the design issues. As has the state, it's a very similar analysis, but one is looking on from the federal side, one is looking from the state standpoint. So what are our options really? And we had talked about, well, perhaps going ahead and getting those permits issued with no intention of constructing the project, which is having those permits issued to the county, and the county would make that very clear that we're just going to get these permits and put them on the shelf. And then should a severe storm event come before us, that's one more tool in the toolbox that we'll have to respond. Now, we're still going to need easements. We're still going to need an erosion control line. There's still a lot of coordination that's going to have to happen with the local property owners, but having those permits in hand would get us so much further down the line and expedite that response plan, whatever it may be, as opposed to where we are now, which is we'd be pretty much starting from scratch with any project or any emergency action that we took. So I was going to kind of turn that over to the Beach Management Committee, and this is something I mentioned about a month ago at the TDC meeting. You know, my nervousness as your consultant regarding our vulnerability and our response to a plan. I've been getting a lot of calls from the county. We've got some pretty severe erosion occurring at Inlet Beach. We've got some severe erosion occurring around the Alice area. John had just mentioned Blue Mountain Beach isn't looking too good. It is a problem. And the beach erosion that we're seeing now is a heavy scarping just due to minor wave activity, not necessarily a storm event. It's eating away at the beach and it's eating away at the toe of the dune. Our easiest and quickest response would be a dune restoration project. A dune restoration project isn't going to do us much good for addressing that type of erosion. We really need to put some sand in the system and put it on the beach, which in essence was the HSCDR project. So I've got a couple options that I've identified, and I'd really just like to turn it over to you guys to solicit some input. The few of those being, should we start surveying the beach annually or on a semi-annual basis once every couple years to assess exactly how much sand we are losing and where it's going? Is it just going into the offshore bar and then it's returning in the summertime? That'll make me feel a lot better as far as directing the management strategy. I do feel a large portion of it is just being shifted offshore and it will come back. But over time, we still are losing material. That's some peat you can see exposed. The annual surveying is, it can be quite expensive. That may be a reason why we want to do it every 2 to 3 years as opposed to every year. Perhaps we need to develop a storm response plan. So if there is a storm, we know exactly what we're going to do. It's, survey the beach, survey the damages. Before the storm hits, we go out 48, 72, 96 hours in advance, document as well as we can what the conditions of the beach were. I know Brian has a similar plan for the beach accesses, so we can document what damage may have occurred at the beach parks and the beach accesses. But taking that just a step further and looking at the health of the beach, and then also the possibility of actually pulling the permits from the DEP and from the Corps of Engineers, getting those and putting them on the shelf at the county office to where if we did have a storm, we could have a public workshop, and then we could come forward and obtain the direction from the property owners. They may still choose to do their own dune restoration project, do their own. They wouldn't have to buy into to a large-scale beach restoration project, but if that was in fact the direction at that time, having those permits would allow us to react very quickly as opposed to waiting another 60, 90, 120 days, whatever it may be. So,
I've got a question. If we wait to get the permit, will we have to resurvey the erosion control line after the storm because it's going to change?
well, the erosion control line is only drawn once.
Okay, so it's going to remain whether we get the permit or not.
That's right. And what I would suggest to the department is we go ahead and have the permit issued, and any easements, any erosion control line recording, any of that needs to be coordinated with the property owners is done as a notice to proceed item. So we would not do that unless those particular property owners had said, yes, I want to participate in the project, sign me up, and then we would know exactly where where the beach restoration would occur, and we'd only do it on those particular properties. But if we wait, I'm not worried on the state side. We should likely get the state permit within 60 to 90 days. There's still a lot of, back-end work such as the erosion control line, the surveying to do there, but the Corps of Engineers does not issue permits to the Corps of Engineers. Since they were our federal sponsor, or they were our federal partner, they do not permit themselves, so we do not have a Corps permit. What I would like to do is go ahead and pull that Corps permit in the name of the county. So if the county chose to move forward with their own project, or if the erosion was so bad that the Corps of Engineers said this is no longer a positive BC ratio project, it's not, or it's cost prohibitive for us to sponsor your project anymore, then it would be all on the county and the state at that point. We would have to pull that Corps permit anyways, and that may take a year. So having the analysis done now, while the fire is still hot,
We'll lose all that funding.
and that's the risk we run by tabling the HSDR, I'm afraid.
Max, what happens in the event of the storms? So we don't have these permits, we decide not to pull these permits right now. What happens in the event of a storm? Is the permitting process sped up on the federal side, or is it not? I mean, do they?
I wouldn't get an emergency permit for any
That's right.
serious damage.
So let's just assume it's another Hurricane Dennis. It wasn't an opal. It wasn't completely catastrophic, but it was pretty bad to damage a number. And I know Dennis was pretty catastrophic for a couple of local areas. There will likely be a disaster declaration. The county and/or the property owners will be allowed to do small dune restoration efforts. They will be allowed to go out and truck haul sand, place it on their beaches. They will be allowed to reconstruct dunes. But what we've tried to educate folks on is dune restoration, while it is a good thing, a very good thing, it only provides you a minimum amount of storm protection as compared to a full-blown beach restoration project. That's really our only option from an emergency standpoint. And it's relatively simple. We can be out there within a matter of a couple months replacing that sand in the dunes, but it's not going to widen the beaches. And just as you see here, if that dune goes away and we replace it, the water line's still going to be eating away at the toe of the dune. There's not going to be any, long-term vegetation there. It's going to be a losing battle, I'm afraid. The other option is seawalls. We saw a lot of seawalls go in after Hurricane Dennis. The county has some new rules on the books now to where they will not approve any seawalls, temporary or permanent, if they have any adverse effect on the neighboring property owner or the neighboring beach. I'm not sure how that could ever, and seawalls can be pretty, they can cause a quite adverse impact to the neighboring property owners and the beach, hence the rule. The only way I can see you addressing that issue is basically if the seawall is buried. If the wall goes in and then it's buried by a 30 to 40 foot wide dune, that would be the only way I could see the property owners getting through that permitting vehicle. But in a situation such as this, if you construct a 30 to 40 foot wide dune, you're now out into the water, and I don't think the state will allow you to do that. So you're in a catch-22 in that situation. It's going to be, I'm losing a lot of sleep over how dire this situation could possibly be. And I'm giving you some kind of doomsday scenarios. I'm not trying to scare you, but it's just, these are some realities that we've seen after Dennis. We saw it after Ivan. We saw it after Opal. I'm not making it up. It is a possibility.
Now, why is there reluctance, if you could say, on the part of beachfront owners to vote against beach restoration? If they are available, if they have the same information available then as they saw this?
Yeah, I think it all comes down to, and I don't blame them, the issue of the erosion control line, having your property line fixed as opposed to being drawn to the mean high water line, having it fixed in a fixed position, and then the property rights associated with that. That's been the number one issue that I've heard, and Lisa, please chime in if I'm wrong.
I think that's true.
It all comes down to property rights.
There's a lot of misinformation. This whole program came out about the same time as the vendor issues came up, and, you know, we drew the vendor maps, and a lot of the people are thinking that these are gonna be vendor areas, these public beach areas, and that they're not gonna have any control over it. That's one of the big things that I hear in the Blue Mountain Beach area.
And there's a number of, I guess, piggyback or follow-on issues too. It's drawing that erosion control line. This issue of consent of use that's been coming up lately with the public property versus private property and the consent of use along the water line, plus the beach vending that John had just mentioned, that's kind of caused a snowball effect. And as a property owner, I don't blame them at all. You know, when you see all these things and you read these articles in the paper, it sounds like there's a big takeover of the property. That is not the case. And we've tried to address some of those issues where if we did in fact record the ECL, you know, I wouldn't want to record the ECL on this particular property owner, this property owner's parcel right here. It's going to be right at the base of the dune, and any new beach is now going to be state property. It's not going to be county property, it will be state property. But what we had proposed is let's wait till the summertime or the end of summer where the beach is at its widest. Then we will record the ECL if that is in fact the case. But this was a danger that we had warned at one of our public workshops. If we wait too long and beach nourishment is in fact the direction we go, or the property owners just basically don't have any other choice, the erosion control line is going to have to be drawn. That is a state rule.
Isn't it already established?
It's established on the western beach from Sandestin to the western Walton County.
I thought it was on all the core plans.
It is. That was the proposed ECL.
Okay.
It has not been recorded.
And so that's what I was getting at in my question. We had that ECL, so it's going to change.
Yeah, and
it could possibly change.
That's right. And
If we have a storm, it's going to change a lot.
That's right. And when Jim Bagley was still here, one of the public meetings, there was a lot of concern of, well, you recorded that line in the wintertime, you know, you need to record that line in the summer, and he had committed to that. The Corps of Engineers and the county had committed to, if in fact we do go forward with the beach restoration, we can do another survey and document the erosion control line, hopefully to give a more representative of what the current condition is, the non-eroded condition.
So if we have a storm, that's just going to throw a monkey wrench in everything.
And I brought that up at one of our meetings. If you look at Destin, some of the areas of Destin, unfortunately, they waited so long, and when we did in fact record the erosion control line, it's right at the base of the dune, but we had no other choice. It was a state requirement. If we wanted to move forward with beach restoration, that's what we had to do. That's the...
Matt, what does a survey of our beaches, what would it cost? You know, once again, that would not include state parks. Just include the beach areas in between the state parks.
I apologize, I should have had this number. For the western 5 miles of beach, it's, I believe it's about $15,000. So $3,000 a mile, give or take.
Matt, can I offer some comments?
Absolutely.
First, the comment, if there's going to be a storm, I don't think is correct. There will be a storm.
I agree.
Whether it's this year or next year, there will be another storm. We're due, we're overdue. So there will be something happening, there will be damage. That's, in my mind, at least a given. Permits, putting them on the shelf, what's the shelf life of those? Year and a half?
No, actually,
You can get extensions on them.
5 to 10 years, and we would pursue a 10-year authorization.
Okay, so you can get a 10-year. Okay.
From the DPM report.
Yes.
So that, to me personally, sounds like a given. That's what would be done with. Because it does cut a lot of time. I've dealt with the DEP, trying to get permits and all, and that is not a lot of fun, and it's a lot of hard work, and it's a long time.
And
Because they have no,
And I don't mean to cut you off, but while we're on that subject, if it is a hurricane, if it is a reactionary emergency time, I can assure you things are not going to come quickly. It's going to get bogged down in the bureaucracy. It will be an emergency response, but that's another fear of mine. Is they say 60 days now, but after a hurricane, it may be.
and your comment about the temporary dune restoration compared to a beach nourishment project,
I fully support you on that, I've seen both. We've had beach nourishment, and it's lasted very well. We've done temporary, and it disappears in after a summer storm or two, because it's very
In
temporary.
a lot of these years, we had multiple storms.
Exactly.
And multiple small storms, they'll wash, the first ones will wash it out, they'll build another one and wash it out.
With the comment that we will have a storm, and we all know we will be having one. For us not to have, and again, in my opinion, for us not to have a beach plan that you speak of in place, ready to go, even at this point, seems to be kind of absurd. I think this county should have a plan in place, should already, I know we do. Most people that have property, at least commercial property, should have a plan in place for when a storm comes. So I think you're asking for input on that. I would be 100% behind that. I think that should have already been done. And I'd be 100% behind pulling the permits, putting them on the shelf, especially with a 10-year shelf life, and moving ahead. I think both those make all the sense in the world, and it's ridiculous not to.
I appreciate it, and in my professional opinion, I agree, and I think if we can kind of come back full circle, the response plan, we'll come up with an idea, and we can present that to the TDC, and then we'll march it forward to the BCC. The beach restoration permits, there was some concern with those regarding, well, if we have the permits issued, we're now putting the county at the risk of potential litigation. The property owners that didn't want the project are going to say, you know, I never signed up for this. They're going to challenge the permits, and we're going to be stuck in litigation for a year or two, whatever it may be. So we need to be very clear. Work with the property owners. Have another public workshop or two. Make them fully aware of our intention. And we need to figure out the course of events. In my mind, we need to go to the TDC, the BCC, make them aware of our proposed action, and then from there go have a public workshop, inform the property owners, inform the public, and then take it to the step of obtaining those necessary authorizations. Because no one wants to get involved in litigation. No one wants to. I'm sure the property owners don't want to sue the county, and I'm sure the county doesn't want to be involved in that litigation either. But if we go into it with the sole intention of this is just a tool in the toolbox. It was our plan A, and we've since tabled that. But if we can retool it to our plan B, to where we are now much better prepared, so if a storm does come along, we can have an emergency workshop, a public workshop, whatever it may be, following the storm event. Get all the property owners out there and say, because I do feel a lot of their opinions will change when they see that. It's the deep into the doom.
The day of the storm hits.
Yeah.
Everybody's opinion is going to change the day after the storm.
But that will give us the option of, we have the permits, we're ready to move forward. At this point in time, here's what we need. Easements, and there may not be easements required if it's just the county and the property owners moving forward on the project. So if the federal government is no longer involved, we no longer need those easements. But we still would need the erosion control line and some other surveys to occur. So, at least, yeah.
I have a couple of questions. On the ECL, my understanding was that it basically was set along the mean high water line, and that's an 18.5-year average, not just one, like what it looks like right now. And the other thing is that I was told, I don't know that this is absolutely true, but is that evulsive events are not considered in that, so that if there is a hurricane and there's tremendous surf, they don't use that particular information at that time, because it does take a whole lot away, and even a fairly short time after, sometimes the beach can widen out again, being very flat, granted,
Sure.
but widen out. So are those things true, or are they not?
Yeah. Partially.
Okay.
So the 18-year thing is, and I've heard this a number of times, and I've tried to clarify it, and I probably haven't clarified it for you. It's the elevation of the mean high water line, and I believe in Walton County it's 0.76 feet,
Right.
or maybe that's maybe around 1.0. Okay, so let's just call it 1 foot. What they do is they record tidal elevations over 18 years, and that's how they determine the 1 foot elevation. So that sets the number. Now the location along the beach, let's say in plan view, they don't look at that as far as an 18-year average. They
It's the
just
vertical measurement, not the horizontal.
That's right. The vertical measurement is where the average comes in, but the line is drawn wherever the mean high water line occurs at the time of the survey. So whatever the beach looks like at that time, and you're correct, evulsive events are not, when you're looking at the mean high water line for, let's say, an inland bay project, the property owners that are trying to reclaim land or disclaim land from the state due to an evulsive event, that's where a lot of those rules tend to come in. But as far as the beach restoration project, the ECL line has to be, we can't just come along and take a mean high water line point every 500 to 1,000 feet, which is the surveys that I was quoting to Brian. You actually have to survey that, I believe it's every 50 feet. Very tight spacing along the shoreline, and then connect those dots, and that becomes the mean high water line. From my understanding, evulsive events, the ECL could be declared immediately after an evulsive event, because that's what occurred in Destin. Now, the state doesn't really care when you record the ECL, but it has to be done before the beach restoration project. So we could, let's say we get a storm right now, we could possibly provide justification and go back to the October 2013 proposed ECL that the Corps of Engineers had surveyed, or we could go out and survey tomorrow and take that line. But the ECL survey has to be done according to very specific measurements and guidelines by the department, but I do believe it can occur right after an evulsive event.
And so to answer your question is measurement is a vertical measurement, average every 18.5 years, and the modifier is produced every 2 years. All right, so our modifier right now is 0.76 feet, roughly 9 inches. Okay, so you go up from NGVD 00, 9 inches, you strike a horizontal line. Where that line hits the beach, that's the mean high water line. All right, so right now, if you did that on that beach right there, obviously it's going to be a different location than it was 4 weeks ago.
So is that current?
That's current, it
Right
was
now?
taken last week.
That's like yesterday.
Yesterday.
Where's that at?
This is around Alice Beach, east end.
And we're seeing that all the way down on the eastern end of the beach, down at Inlet Beach. We almost lost a truck last week because it fell off the shelf. And,
Why did Alice Beach vote for beach renourishment?
I don't believe anybody in there turned back. I have to go back and look, but
I'm
I'm recognizing that we had 10% favorable voters.
Have we lost our funding, or?
No, from the Corps of Engineers standpoint, we are tabled, but this was what I mentioned to one of the county commissioners that asked some very similar questions of what we're talking about. What would be the process after a storm for the Corps of Engineers to get involved? And my response was basically, it's a gamble, because right now we have a positive BC ratio project where we've got some very high value properties. The nourishment is very expensive, but when you look at the property values that we're protecting, it is a far BC ratio, or we're on the positive side. Now, if those properties become damaged, if the beach is more severely, if the properties become damaged, the Corps no longer considers those. And I know the property owners can rebuild, and they can. The property still maintains a lot of value, but the way the Corps of Engineers looks at it is that property no longer counts. It's off the books. Now, if the beach is eroded? We now have to put more sand, a larger volume out there, so therefore the cost of the nourishment goes up. If the value of the property goes down and the cost of the nourishment goes up, we may tip the scale, and it's now a negative BC ratio. We've lost our Corps involvement altogether. So that's the risk that we run by not moving forward with the project now. But it's not the county's decision, it's not our decision, it's the property owners, and the property owners spoke loud and clear with the easements.
I think we may get some change of heart on that. We're getting so much erosion, and we've been talking about this in all our meetings. we get into the summer, we get a couple mild storms, and people are gonna start shopping for sand, and they're gonna see that it's 25, 30 bucks a yard. They gotta truck it from a long way, get DEP to approve it. You know, it's really, you know, it's gonna be a difficult situation for them, and can we like put in develop a cost per 50 foot of frontage so a homeowner can say, well, this is what I'd be saving if the Corps was involved, you know? Figure out a dune, you know, what they're gonna be paying, 25 bucks a yard to put it on there, and so we'll come up with a cost, you know, a benefit for the property owner. And come up with some of these aerials, show the 2013 proposed erosion control line, then show the shoreline further in and say, well, this is what you could have had, this is what you got now.
I think at this point, we've skipped into new business, which is fine. But I think at this point, what we need to make a decision on is I think what Matt's asking for is for us to make a decision on presenting a workshop. Okay, the BCC has voted on HSDR, this table. Okay, so I don't think we need to come back and ask them to rethink that decision. So we need to have a workshop on Plan B, and that will inevitably lead to thought process of maybe HSDR is now a more palatable solution for the Gulffront homeowners. I don't think we need to go back to and say, hey, y'all need to rethink HSDR right now.
No, that's not what I was thinking. I was just getting more, thinking of more.
But I think we ought to vote, make a decision today on to recommend to the TDC that Matt, as our beach consultant, present a workshop on what would be involved in Plan B. Because he's presented to us today what would be involved. That would be possible application for the federal state permits, survey the existing beach, and then develop a plan for dune resto and beach restorations. So I think what we need to do today is decide on, do we recommend to the TDC that they recommend to the BCC that Matt Trammell, as Walton County's beach consultant, his firm, Taylor Engineering, hold a workshop to discuss the items that will be contained in developing Plan B.
I think we have to.
Is that what your process is going to go forward with now?
Yeah, I completely agree with Brian. You know, the county was pretty clear, and the easements are clear. You know, we can't go back and rework the HSDR. In my mind, it's tabled. Now, if it becomes reopened after a hurricane, so be it. But for now, it's tabled, and we just need to move forward with the Plan B.
If you're talking about a 10-year setup for permitting or whatever, I'm not speaking for beach owners. I just want to make that
Sure.
perfectly clear. Okay, but let's say hypothetically that you did this Plan B and you had the permits sort of set up and in place in case of emergency, which we know will arise sooner or later. Why couldn't you use what's already established and, as you said, was only being permitted, held in abeyance because of the fact that they were waiting on easements? Why couldn't you use the work that's been done and paid for to the tune of millions of dollars and just ask for that to be your Plan B 10-year permitting scenario?
That's exactly what we're going to do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm not proposing
I wouldn't want to
any
read
new
too hard
design.
about it.
And I apologize, I should have made that very clear. Yeah, the beach restoration design that was presented by the Corps of Engineers, that's what's already been assessed, that's what they've already reviewed. What I would like to do is let's just go ahead and close the book on that and get the permits issued and put them on the shelf.
One less step in the process.
Exactly, and I'd like to do that now as opposed to after a hurricane or during a hurricane. That's all we're proposing. And, you know, like I said, and Lisa, if you have any guidance for us, I'd greatly appreciate it, is I want to make sure the property owners are very clear this is not us trying to sneak in and construct the project out from under them or, you know, do anything such as that. And I want to make that very clear to the BCC that, you know, we're not trying to do anything in the dark. It all needs to be done in the sunshine, and we want to be partners with the property owners. And we don't want to do anything without their consent, but this will be just another tool in the toolbox for when that time comes, they can again choose, yes, we want it, or no, we don't, and we can move on.
I think we tell them that we can't really do anything until we get the notice to proceed, so.
That's right.
Just having the permit on the shelf.
And that's exactly what I would do, is I would request the permit with these specific items as notice to proceed, and that's what we would do once we actually knew what portion of the project we're doing, all of it, half of it, whatever it may be.
I think just your approach will be well received. I'm not saying what people will or won't do, because far be it for me to predict that, but your approach is very above board. It's you're very good about saying, this is the pro, this is the con, this is what happens. I do think that there's a lot of confusion about the ECL situation.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that was a big deal, as you point out, and it may be coincidental in a way, but the whole vendor situation, while it's true that today the upland owners have say whether there can be vendors on the beach, but if you had that whole segment of beach that was renourished and it became state land, and the BCC at some point 2 or 3 years from now decided to change that and say, look, any land that's public no longer requires upland owner, because that has actually been brought up at a BCC meeting, not that it's been presented on an agenda yet. But then you're taking away something that these beachfront owners really did think they were going to have long-term control over, whether they wanted to have, 100 chairs and 50 umbrellas set up along their beaches. It's just something to consider that is actually valid. If it becomes public beach in that segment, then all of a sudden it really is out of the hands of the homeowners, unless there is some long-term legal commitment made, not just an ordinance, because those
Sure.
can be changed.
Well, and I completely understand, and that's the type of thing that we will address at the public workshop. The thing I've heard resounding is, we wish the public would have been more involved, and it's been 10 years since this project's been going on. But I fully hear where you're coming from. As far as the state land, in my opinion, that's state property, and they don't allow vending on that property. But that is something we'll certainly clarify, and we'll present to them. So I guess,
So you want to pull the DEP permit, which they're just holding for us, basically. And go ahead and apply for a core permit, which could take a year.
Right, but it will be, I don't think it'll take that long because the analysis has already been done. But again, I want to strike while the iron's hot and the fire's hot. And
So if we pull that core permit, you said, then we're pretty much on our own. We lose our funding then.
No, we won't.
We won't.
But it's our plan B.
Project.
It's our plan B. If a storm comes along that's so bad that it tips the scale on that BC ratio and we lose federal responsibility, then we have that core permit as an option to go at our own.
But if we have a core permit and we don't tip that BC ratio, they'll still participate?
And I would encourage them to do that. We want them as our federal partner. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
And it's a 50-year commitment.
Yeah.
So
You need a motion for a recommendation?
Yeah, it
We're
should
going
be.
to have to hold a workshop on Plan B, which is applying for the applications, the surveys, the dune and the beach restoration.
It's to have a workshop to explain Plan B, or what could be Plan B.
let me get your opinion on this, Brian. Should we first march it to the TDC and the BCC prior to the workshop, or?
Like today, our recommendation will be to the TDC, for them to recommend to the BCC.
That's right. Yes.
But
I just wanted to make sure we were clear.
The Taylor Engineering, as coastal engineer for Walton County, holds a public workshop to discuss the items that could be included in a Plan B, since Plan A has now been taken. Okay? So that's what we're doing.
I have one more question. On the sand survey, the core samples, how long would it take to go out and get the core samples? Because that was also a concern of, what was the sand, because all of the
Yeah.
ones were lost before.
I'm not exactly sure on the county purchasing policies, but we have all the information. I believe we could resubmit that out for bid within 30 days or so. A 30-day bid process. The actual work could likely take 30 to 45 days. The work in the field is going to be pretty quick. So I don't see that being a big hurdle.
That's best case scenario. Worst case scenario would be a 60-day approval of putting it back out for bid. And then last time we had a 90, we started with a 120-day window for the contractor to get the work done. We reduced it to 90 days. There's only a few people to do it. And if you give them a bigger window, the cost is less. So I would say between 3 and 6 months would be a window of low tech.
What about an emergency? I mean, because basically that's what we're talking about here, is a plan B for crisis mode. I mean, you wouldn't want to start pumping sand on the beach in mass and find out that it was in bad shape.
Let me ask you this, if your house is falling in, are you going to care what the sand looks like?
If my house is falling in, I'm not going to care what sand. Well, I'll get my own sand because I can get it faster, but.
What if you can't get it faster? What if that sand is not available?
Well, if it's not, I mean, if it's not available, then we're all kind of.
So I'm not trying to be argumentative, I'm just saying that are the beachfront owners really going to be concerned?
No, I'm not talking about beachfront owners now, specifically. I'm talking about, I don't expect this to happen, but, there's been a lot that's happened. We had the well spill since the last cores were done. We truly don't know exactly what the sand out there looks like. I presume we'd use the same.
Yeah, it's the same for us.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, we're not required to go out and get the sand. There was a number of geotechnical reports and analyses that were done. The state has reviewed those, and they have certified the material as beach quality. So the state's not going to require us to do that. That was something that the county had offered to ease some of the concern for the property owners. It's not something that we would be required to do to move forward with the project. And for the oil spill, we've actually gone out to that Barrow site. We went out a couple years ago, and I believe BP went out and collected 24 grab samples. It may have been 20 grab samples from the surface, had them analyzed for all kinds of chemicals. Everything came back undetectable. And I do realize things can change within a year, but that still would be something we would likely do before dredging, is just take a dozen or so grab samples.
Well, that's actually reassuring. I had not heard that there'd actually been anything done out there since the well spill, because that's really been the only big event that could have changed things that I know of anyway. Thank you.
All right, next we need a motion. What you said.
Motion should be.
One more question. Just sitting back, 3 or 4 meetings, I guess. We talked at one point, or maybe I read in the paper, about the amount of money that Corps of Engineers was putting into beach restoration. And it wasn't 50%. I was trying to remember what that amount of money was. I know it's a 50-year commitment, but from just this next round, if it happens, countywide beach restoration, it seemed like it was like $50 million bill.
That
they're
sounds.
going to pay like 13. The Corps of Engineers costs.
Their cost share was approximately 28%, somewhere around 30%. The numbers are on the website. I'm going to misquote something about it. Somewhere around 30%.
It's not unheard of financially for us to proceed without do a plan C in the county and the state, get beach restoration for the entire county without 50 years, without the easement, which in my view is what the property owners have a problem with. In addition to the
Any beach renourishment, regardless of who's paying for it, would require a construction easement.
And the ECF.
That's
If the
well,
state's
temporary one, but not a 50-year one like the Corps of Engineers one. I mean, that's a real what you're talking about.
Right.
Is there any, and this Plan B does, here, it's more like a Plan 1.2.
Yeah,
It's
it's
not-
it's more like a local restoration effort versus a federal.
Yeah,
When I say local, I mean county and state funded.
it's making, the plan that's on the shelf, accessible in the future in case we need it. Plan B to me would be how we're gonna restore the beach, which is the original goal. Now the goal is something else, the Plan 1.2. Plan B or Plan 2 should be how we're gonna get the beach restored. I think with the input that we've already gotten from the property owners, maybe we need to be keeping in the back of our mind of proceeding without the encumbrances that cause the maybe the 10 or 90-10 split with the property owners. And proceeding, well, we could get 100% of the property owners behind something, because like you say, things like this, you know, they're gonna want beach restoration, and they're gonna realize if they do it individually, that's not gonna do anything long term.
Still need to do erosion control.
That's right.
I mean, we got, 15%, 7.5%, 4% of, count the revenue from coming in, and half of that going into the bank for beach restoration, and we're sitting here, you know, doing paperwork. And not moving into sand.
Yeah,
I think that
well, like I say, that's why it's
People paying
important.
the TDC, people paying the TDC taxes, half of which goes to beach restoration, and expect some sand being moved at some point.
If the county paid for everything, not that I'm saying, but let's say there was a joint effort between the county and beachfront owners to have a pot of money. If the state doesn't contribute, do you still have to have an ACL?
Yes.
No matter what?
Because you are, the mean high water line, wherever it is drawn the day of construction or before, whenever it may be, you are reclaiming state land by taking it from the wet into the dry. You're also using a state resource, which is that sand from the offshore borrow site, and bringing it up. So that, that specific issue has been taken to the Supreme Court a number of times, and we're not getting around the ECL. If we move the mean high water line, there will be an ECL recorded, and that's the double-edged sword. We can work on the upland and not have an ECL and just build a dune, but the dune protection is going to give you somewhere on the order of a 5 to 10 year storm event, which may be this right here. A beach is going to give you on the order of a 50 to 100 year storm event. It's really night and day, the difference between those two. So again, it's
You
just,
said it there, you can't even do
That right there is because of the flatness of the beach, the low elevation of the beach. That was caused by a storm 2 weeks ago, Josh, 2.5 weeks ago. It came out of the southeast, and a high, combined with a high tide and a low leak, and a low elevation, flat, sandy portion of the beach. And in some cases, it was 50 feet long or more. Right there, I bet probably 150 feet off that beach. But anyway, so the motion needs to be, like I said, right now, what we're talking about is having a workshop to discuss Plan B and what could be included in Plan B. And Matt will be the person to say, this is the way we can go about Plan B, and that will allow us to invoke more discussion during the workshop like we've had today. And that discussion needs to be include all the people that are affected by the end product, which is going to be some sort of dune or beach and/or beach restoration. Dune and beach, or one or the other. And maybe funded by different agencies. So the motion today should be to recommend to the TDC that Taylor Engineering hold a public workshop to discuss what could be Plan B for beach management.
This is emergency response.
I believe we would key it up as a storm response plan.
I make a motion based on how you.
What he said. Do we have a second?
Get moving along.
That's what he said.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Who was my second?
Motion. Right. One question. If we are in an emergency situation and we get an emergency permit, then can we move that mean high water line?
No, the state will not issue beach restoration permits as emergency authorization.
So, I mean, but with our program, I mean, we have an emergency response program. Can we go out and put sand in these critically eroded areas, move that mean high water line as part of a disaster declaration and emergency permit? I remember at Destiny by the sea, Jay was out there, he built a peninsula out there. He was just digging with an excavator and reclaimed all those lots.
And they will not allow us, like the beach scraping that used to go on, beach mining, you can't do it. You can't do it anymore.
Can we truck it in and dump it and, push that out if it's...
If we had the beach restoration permit that I'm referring to, it would be just a simple modification of us to go out and place some dump trucks out there. We could do that if we had that permit vehicle in place. But since we don't...
But that permit wouldn't allow us to modify the mean high water line.
It would. So the beach restoration permit that I'm referring to, the 10-year authorization, it would include conditions regarding maintenance of the beach. And that could be truck haul maintenance, that could be dredge, sand placement, it could be a number of things included in that. It's that overriding permit vehicle is going to give us a tremendous amount of flexibility in our management strategy, whether it be small scale, large scale, short term, long term. Having the assessment done on the entire large scale plan will allow us to pick basically anything and everything within that box. And that's what we're recommending to the county,
So
flexibility.
it's more of a beach management plan.
Yeah. I'm a little confused still on the mean high water line. When can we move it? When can we not move it?
Well,
I mean, if we truck a bunch of sand in right there and push it out, 20 feet, we're still not out to where we were in 2013.
and I want to be clear, the permit is half of that step. We couldn't modify that beach there without an erosion control line, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So we still need, in an area.
So that homeowner couldn't dump a bunch of sand down the hill right there as
No.
part of an emergency permit?
No, folks have done that in the past, but I think the state's keeping a keen eye out.
Oh, yeah, they're,
So.
yeah, there's a bunch of this.
Now, Leonard at Sandestin, that is a different situation, because they do have an ECL. They
Yeah.
do have a permit that, we're trying to get extended over there. They would fall under this new permit as well. It would be a county-wide authorization. He would have that flexibility. But in areas where there's no ECL, you're kind of stuck until that line is recorded. So, it'll make a lot more sense. We'll organize all the thoughts. We'll come in with a response plan and do the workshop and hopefully get everyone on the same page.
Okay, let's move on. Anybody else got any comments on this? Okay, old business, I guess we don't have any old
I
business.
just make a comment, last meeting, Jack brought up the article about Chottage Beach Mouse and the FWS involvement in creation of the new Chottage Beach Mouse domain and how it would affect us. It affects us during the permitting process. They asked for a chance to review anything we do as far as beach walkers and all that, or what they call field review. So during the design and permitting process, they're notified, they're given the plans, they come out and look at it, and if they have any issues, then they tell us then. It really, in the long run, is not that big of a deal unless we have an active Chattahoochee beach mouse habitat. Now, we know where most of those are right now. This new establishment of the domain just kind of gave them a little bit more review authorization also. So we've actually had one instance with them where we have a project that came before the BCC, and it was brought up after they'd been contacted, and we explained that if the project moves forward and how it moves forward, it would be included during the design permitting process. So engineer with county went ahead and contacted them, They already came out, take a look at it and said they're not gonna have that, cursory review. So, in the long run, it's not gonna affect Walton County too much, building, beach, accesses. So, that was one new business we had last time. The other one was, in the May meeting, I asked y'all all to get out and take a look around, read chapter 22, with the tabling of the HSDR project. That was our main concern over the last year and a half. Now we need to get back to doing what we do, which is beach management. That includes maintenance and use of the accesses, how we do garbage collection, basically all the stuff that we do under our beach operations department, which is beach maintenance and beach code enforcement. So, if you have not gone out and taken a survey of the area, please do so. We have a ride-along program if you want to do that, with either beach maintenance or code enforcement, so you can get a first-hand. But it's easier just to go and find a regional beach access, or in the parking lot, and go for a walk down the beach. We have available on our website the locations of all the accesses. We can provide you with a map. And if you're really interested, we have pictures and all that of it, so you can get a look at what they looked like about a year and a half ago compared to what they look like now. A few things we have done with our beach accesses is a sign eradication program. We recognize that we have a lot of signage down at the toe of the accesses. So we have consolidated that signage, removed a portion of it. On the top part of the access, we realized, many neighborhood beach accesses, that we did not have consistent signage. So we recently got that approved. You're familiar with our brown hoops that we use for our community signs and our wayfaring signs, and also now our bike racks. We adapted that to a smaller in width hoop. About 4 foot tall, Josh? 5 feet tall, about 1.5 foot wide, 2 feet wide. And it will look just like our large wayfaring signage that we have at the top of our regional beach accesses. So that'll consolidate signage and make it consistent. So those are some of the things we're doing through destination improvement and just some in-house things. Everybody, as part of our duty, get out, look around, and think about beach management activities. So
We nailed that.
we
I
got
noticed a lot of them sticking up a little bit. We used to go out every couple of years or so, pound them down, make sure, because people stub their toes on them and stuff. They stick up a little bit.
Josh, through our crew leaders, we monitor our accesses. We have 21 of them we're redoing this year, and when we redo them, it's a facelift, boardwalk, or the deck boards and handrails. They'll all be screwed, with stainless screws, and so we can eliminate the nail head tops. So another thing is we're formulating our budget for this year, so this is really imperative. You can go out and take a look, and if you want a list of the ones that I have included for this year, or for 2016 budget, I'll give those to you, and then you can look at the other ones. Also, multi-use path is kind of part of beach management to a sense. It's something that we take care of as beach operations. But, just ask you all to get out and look at our area and think about your duties as beach management committee and how we can make the beach, manage the beach and all aspects of it. So with that, we'll move on to new business. That's all I had in new business.
Brian, what's involved in the ride-along program?
Ride along
Sounds
and
pretty neat.
do what?
Sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah, well, just ride along and observe how we do the two aspects of our business, beach maintenance and beach code enforcement. If you ride along with beach code enforcement, you can ride along with Jeff. Typically, 2 or 3 hour ride, and get to experience what Jeff and company gets to experience. Which starting in summer, it's a rather challenging job. We have 2 types of visitors on our beach. We have the people that come here for 7 days. We have the people that are locals that use it, and how those people use the beach and remain compliant with our ordinance is is what we do out there. So it's very eye-opening because, you know, I don't know if you follow Facebook, but, you know, you'll see that we either do a fabulous job or we do a crappy job. And, you know, and in some cases, it's on the same instance. And then beach maintenance, right along with a crew and observe, you know, the trash collection process, the bathroom cleaning process, and also the multi-use path. You know, we have an outside contractor that does that for us, but you know, you ride along and get some finer details of what's actually involved in that. I mean, you know, a lot of people don't understand the clearance heights we cut to on the path. You know, we have standards that we ask watercrest to cut to trees to a certain height width off the path, clean up, you know, what their frequency of cleaning is and all that.
So as the beaches become more narrow, at least right now, what are the issues facing you and your groups?
Well, right now we have a big issue of collecting garbage off that beach. Like I say, Josh, can you pull up the picture of the truck? Last week, we were down in the Inlet Beach area, and our guy, you know, felt comfortable that he could make the area, make a successful pass in between the rack line, which was about 3 or 4 feet tall, and the dune line. And what happened was he made it, you know, of course we're trying to stay out of the vegetation, and he made it through, the truck got stuck and it wouldn't go forward, so he started backing up, and as he did, it just started sliding down that little hill, and then it got to that edge, and as you can see, we about lost a $40,000 vehicle, because if it would have gone over, it would have gone turtle, and it would have been laying upside down in the surf, more than likely. But we were successful. We were able to get a piece of equipment down there and dig it out and get it back on its, you know, wheels. But that's the result is, you know, we have 600 of these things on the beach. You know, there's been some discussion on Facebook once again that TDC just needs to collect it from the top side. That's all fine and dandy on 62 beach accesses, 52 of them, or 54 of them being neighborhood beach accesses. I say it's fine and dandy. It's still a little bit tough because there's no parking area at the top side. But what do you do with the other 540 stations that we have at resorts, private beach walkovers, various places down the beach? You know, we can't, some of those we just simply can't get to but from the beach. And so, you know, right now, we're actually abandoning some of them. We're just not putting bags back in because we can't get to them. And so if you don't put bags in, they don't fill up like that right there.
Little people just leave their trash on the beach.
Other counties have experimented with that, and they've been trained to leave their trash on the beach. So I would be against putting the trash can on the upland. They're just going to leave it at the toe of the dam.
Yeah. Oh,
whether it be laziness or, you know,
it's been tried before. That's why we have them down at the toe of the dam. People actually do a pretty good job of getting off a flat portion of the beach up to that bag holder right there. As you can see, people use it. I mean, they used it 84,000 times last year. That's how many bags put off the beach last year.
What's the problem? Because you're having, can't get access to them, so you have to come back out, get up onto the highway, and come back around. Is that what the issue is?
Well, that's part of the issue.
Yeah.
We have limited travel on places. All right. So invariably, when coastal dune lakes break out, we can't get to some locations, or we end up getting the truck stuck in the coastal dune lake outfall. Sometimes we just have to go a day or two, and we do as best we can get them from the top side, but we can't get to all of them. But now we have a new problem of getting trucks down the beach. We are experimenting with our small gator that the beach ambassador, forgot to introduce him, that's John Callender, our new beach ambassador, that he uses to traverse the beach to spread goodwill. We experimented using it this week, and we've had some success pulling the trailer. And so we think that some UTVs, utility vehicles, John Deere Gator type, not necessarily that brand, but you know, something equivalent to that, would be advantageous to have to get when we have this condition. You know, how long is this erosion condition going to last? You know, like Matt said, the sand might be in the offshore bar and it'll get deposited back over a period of months. But right now, the only solution we have at a lot of these bag stations is to not put bags back in them because we can't get back to them. And then the result of that is going to be people are going to leave their trash down on the beach. And then the result of that is going to be widespread complaining of the beaches now are trashy. TDC, what do you do? So,
So what you proposing, what you need to,
yeah, I mean, you know, to be honest with you, I think 2 UTVs right now would be most helpful in getting into these locations that we're having trouble with erosion. And then when we have coastal delay problems, getting through coastal Montana Falls. It's easier to get, you know, a 4-wheel drive UTV that weighs 1,200 pounds or less than it is a 4,800 pound truck.
Need a recommendation for us to forward that to the TDC?
Yeah, it'd be a recommendation to the TDC to recommend to the BCC to consider using leftover funds from our vehicle purchase for 2016 and possible supplementation of reserve funds for the purchase of 2 UTVs.
So moved.
Did that?
John and who? Brian made
Yeah.
a motion?
Yeah.
John second.
Appreciate it.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Is there some reason they haven't been using those, you know, dune buggy type things used to be the
Well, we,
primary plan?
yeah, we've tried different things over the years. You know, one time we actually had tractors or trailers. And the trucks turned out to be, at that time, the best for conditions presented. I do know that there are different opinions on tracks and the amount of vehicles on the beach. And now with the customary use issue coming up and private property issues colliding, more issues. But right now, to resolve an immediate problem that is only going to get worse during summer is how do we access these places on the east end of the beach? And, you know, if things keep moving the way they are and compromises are made to let everybody use the beach, you know, what I would call a fair and equitable agreement. And part of it is we transition from trucks to UTVs, and so be it. I mean, I exchange trucks every 3 years, so it wouldn't take long to refleet, in other words. But you know, right now, yeah, the other thing is we have to get them to our locations on the beach. Obviously, we can't drive off-road vehicles down the road. So that was another reason why we transitioned to the trucks.
Are those trash receptacles only on the beach access?
No, we have 600 of them, and you'll notice that we have some of those pictures aren't our newest model, but another program we did was consolidation of the trash collection holder, the bag holders, onto a single post with an arm that can hold 2 or 4, called a 2-banger or a 4-banger, as opposed to a single post. And so that eliminated some clutter. But we have those at all of our neighborhood beach accesses, and sometimes there'll be 2 or 3 of those ganged holders. And we also have at private dune walkovers because they're bed tax collectors. And we have them throughout resort communities. So
On private property?
yeah. But the reason is because they're in the rental program. You know, they're VRBOs or they're under the management. And they contribute to the bed tax. So that's where the justification came in to put them at the total of a private walkover. Yes, ma'am.
Were they given an option whether they wanted that or not?
It's always an option. They can call and say, I mean, to be honest with you, that's how we get 600 of them, is because people, hey, can we get one of those bag holders?
But if they didn't want them, they could say, we would prefer not to have it?
Most certainly. If it's private property, they can say, hey, can you come and move your bag holder?
Okay. I was just curious, because I wasn't aware that there was any communication on those.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised that the TDC or Walton County pays for private property trash collection.
Well, once again, it's tied back to the bed tax collection.
And the beach maintenance and cleanup.
Yeah.
I mean, we want to remain a blue wave beach.
But we've had that in the past, here over the last year and a half, people say, I want you to come get your bag holder. And then about a month later, they call us back and say, hey, man, can you come put the bag holder back in? They literally can't keep up with the garbage.
Yeah,
And what happens is even though our community has transitioned to more permanent residents than we used to have, we still have a large amount of rental property on the Gulf front. And the people that come rent, for whatever reason, they're not absorbing all the rules and regs of the beach. And whose fault is that? Well, obviously, if it's a VRBO, they're not making them aware enough of what should be expected as a beach visitor. And but like I say, a big portion of it is garbage, and it's not just wet garbage. As you can see with some of the other pictures we had up there, there's chairs. At the end of the week, we'll be surprised on Friday how many of those $6.99 chairs.
It's easier to leave it than take it
Kid
off.
toys and everything.
Broken tins.
I've seen on Friday, our Leave No Trace program, we pick up, be surprised how many tents we throw away. These pop-up jobbers, we can get them at Walmart for $49.99 now. But they come down here and they buy them with the express intent of throwing them away at the end of the week. They have no intention of taking them back out there. But, so anyway.
Brian, I'm sure the UTVs would help you, but have you seen any problem with folks roping off the private property where you have an issue getting around those properties as well?
Some here recently it's cropped up. Most people don't have too big an issue with the beach maintenance people because of the service that we provide.
I just want to make sure folks weren't going all the way down to the water.
They are, but the BCC is addressing that through an ordinance revision that will be on the workshop on the 10th, and then, or I'm sorry, public hearing on the 10th to amend the obstructions ordinance, and that will probably change some of those posts and ropes and stuff like that, or it will lead into further discussion and threat of litigation and all that. I don't know where to go, but currently right now, our ordinance has a disconnect in it concerning posts, ropes, and signs, whereas in the second paragraph does not say they're a violation. This all came about, we issued a citation to a fellow down on the west end of the beach for doing that exact thing. Now, this person, and most of the people that do put this up, understand that they have to give law enforcement and emergency vehicles access to cross their beach. So they leave a portion of it undone, typically down at the water's edge. But anyway, we issued a citation. They challenged it in court. Court ruled in their favor based on the fact that the second paragraph does not specifically say that these are violations. It just says they're obstructions. And so that is one of the items they're changing. But all this can be found in the meeting minutes of the April 26th meeting, and or I'm sorry, the 12th, April 12th or the April 26th meeting, and then there's a public hearing scheduled for, I believe it's May 10th. Is that correct, Dottie?
It's May 10th.
Yeah. So that public hearing will be the time to discuss the amendment of the ordinance, and then the BCC will vote on how to amend it based on how that discussion goes in that public hearing that day.
I think they've got another situation they're going to have to figure out how to deal with is most of those people that are doing that sort of thing in the signs. There's a big outcry these days about people posting just a sign, even forget the ropes and all. But with the sheriff's SOP saying basically if you want any ability at all to enforce your private property rights, you've got to do this whole list of things. And frankly, they seem kind of excessive. They're certainly expensive. So that anybody that's done it properly and is getting enforcement has spent some money on it, because it's not a cheap thing to do, and it's got some pretty rigorous rules. So there's got to be some sort of balance, because nobody wants to see signs all over the beach. Not even the people that have posted them enjoy having to deal with them and put them there. But at the same time, you know, if they do have a situation where they want enforcement, they can't get it otherwise. So there's got to be some sort of balance that's struck.
That's a problem.
I know the sheriff.
Right, with the sheriff's.
They have it all the way down most of the water,
Yeah.
it looks like they go in between them.
Yeah,
And they're down to one.
Yes.
And I assume that that will all come up in this public hearing, and those points have to be addressed. You know, the sheriff has a SOP that says you have to mark your corners, and then there's an ordinance that says you can't put signs. So I'm assuming that all that will be addressed in the public hearing, and the proper decision will be made.
The property owner is reacting to that sheriff, to the sheriff's big list of things that they have to come up with to get a drunk football fan off their beach. That he came up with over a weekend of two ladies getting involved in it. I mean, he came up with this list over the weekend between a Friday afternoon.
You're talking about the SOP? Talking about the sheriff?
SOP.
No, they actually published that back about, when was that, Jeff?
It's been a year. It's been pretty while.
Yeah.
Right after two ladies got into it.
It was already on the books before that, I think, it already been out a couple of weeks.
They've done some modifications to it, you know.
The sheriff says you need to really have a fence, so no trespassing, and specific wording for the deputy to be able to go.
It also says it has to be marked, the southern boundary has to be marked also.
Yeah.
So they can't even do that, but they still try to do what they can do. I'm out of it's frustrating for us.
Anyway, the sheriff's response to, you know, a bunch of calls about trespassing. And then, you know, there's specific rules in Florida statutes on trespassing and what you have to do to prevent people from trespassing on their property. So the sheriff, you know, was attempting to be within Florida statute. And, you know, unfortunately, we got an area.
And what I'm saying, all I'm saying is for the purposes of this committee is the sheriff doing that is what's caused this problem. But it comes to a head.
That's part of the problem.
Hey, can they even prosecute a trespassing violation? I mean, that's a prescriptive easement, pretty much south of the vegetation line. People have been using it for forever. You know?
That's the discussion that's going on.
And so could they, I mean, if they get arrest somebody for it, will they ever be able to prosecute
Yeah,
it?
the biggest cause of the issue is congestion on the beach and bad behavior.
I could see vendors, you know, setting up in front of properties, but the public using it, I mean, that just.
That's all discussion will come up here in the next couple of years.
Beach access, just going on to another point here. It's at Allen Loop Drive and 38, down on the steepest to the west side of Allen Loop. Somebody got rid of the yellow, blue, orange, green flag that used to go up there. And for a long time, there was an American flag put up. Stayed there forever, and finally it was wore out. But now they got an Alabama Crimson Tide flag.
We're about to do something about that.
Yeah, I don't want to complain or anything, I just want to bring that to your attention.
No,
Is that
wait a
They
second.
can take that Alabama flag and bury it. And
that a
put an Auburn flag up
You're always
there.
talking about a private flag hoist, and it's not one of our,
It,
it's gotta be private, it's not our, it's not one of
and
our.
I believe.
No, because we have a Seminole flag line up at the
Yeah, well, Seminole would be better than Alabama.
There you
It'd
go.
be better than-
No Gators game on.
I think it'd have to be private, because doesn't the fire department do
They do.
flags?
Yes.
Yeah, so they're
If you
not,
look at the-
you don't have somebody putting up a
Just
flag
just
for
keep in
football.
mind that private property owners also fly similar
It
flags.
looks like the flagpole that's on the TDC property, if you could look at it. Now, I don't know where the lines are on the plat, but, as an Auburn fan and an Auburn alumni, I don't appreciate that flag on my
Any more new business, anybody? No? Okay.
I got just a quick question for you, Brian. I saw the meeting last week or 2 weeks ago. There was a number of beach accesses that you had presented. Are there any new beach accesses coming up in the near future? Anything?
No, on February 10th, we have a June 8th, public workshop to discuss the Walton Dunes beach access. which is a piece of BLM land that was conveyed to us by lease in 1993 or 1998, and then by patent deed in 2013. It previously gone through the Destination Improvement Committee and TDC to be improved. Right now it's unimproved. And so at the April 12th meeting, they approved to move forward with it. And then at the April 26th meeting, they approved to hold public workshops on how to develop. So June 8th at 3 p.m.
No, it's 5.
That's right, yeah, that's a special workshop. It's not on a BCC meeting, so it's, what is it, 5:30?
5:30, 7:30.
Yeah, 5:30, 7:30. Yes, ma'am.
I have a suggestion that we might want to work on, if you think this is within our purview. When these proposed accesses are presented to the BCC, a lot of the materials are not necessarily up to date, and I don't mean this of any criticism, but there are not generally topographic surveys of any kind to help understand dune lines, and this specifically came up because of Walton Dune and some things that were mentioned. But there were apparently pieces of property on the aerial that were just missing because the aerial was done back, I don't know when, a few years back. It seems to me that it's really difficult for the TDC or the BCC to make an informed decision about what to do when they have no traffic studies, they don't have up-to-date aerials, they don't have any topographic information. I mean, they kind of have, this is the general, this is the location, this is the cost, that part is pretty easy to come up with, but they don't have these conditions that are really fundamental to understanding how a new access might affect that area. Doesn't mean that you don't ultimately have an access. It just means that it turns out to be a well thought out access that takes into consideration all these other factors right up front. Because I presume the reason we're doing a Walton Dunes meeting is because Walton Dunes area kind of went whoosh, you know, we didn't know about, even though it was on the agenda, but 2 years ago or whenever it was, they had a bundle of people there at one they did know about. So I think they're just, I think a lot of that's going to get rehashed again. And it seems like we could head some of that off at the pass by really having taken into consideration whatever conditions
Well, actually,
exist
the
in that
thing in
area.
that package was a topographical survey, a conceptual plan. This was all went to the TDC back on 12/2/2014. The aerials at the time were probably 2012 aerials. Now, it's kind of hard to get up-to-date aerials to plan on. However, we have come up with a solution to give the most current information we can get. We are purchasing a aerial camera, also known as a drone.
That's cool.
That we will register properly and get all the proper clearances to fly. And we will then be able to take beautiful high-def shots of the beach area. And hopefully our engineer of record will be able to use that information to overlay on. But part of the problem is that, like in the case of Walton Dunes, back in 2012, it was started, and it was because of that piece of land that was being conveyed to us formally in a patent deed that has stipulations of it being developed into a recreational and public purpose. Okay, and so by taking that land, we agreed to develop it into some sort of recreational purpose, and I don't believe that was leave it a sandy beach with nothing done on it. Because that's not really a recreational purpose.
Back in the 90s, the BLM was going to sell all these parcels.
Right.
That one and the Inland Beach access, they were going to sell them all.
Yeah.
And Malcolm went over to Jackson, Mississippi, and raised Cain with them and said, no, we want all these, and that's when he got the leases on them.
Yeah. So, but in the case of new beach accesses, how do you start the process I mean, how do you start the process? Because the process really is TDC, or Destination Improvement Beach Management Committee. Do you want to improve this access, or do you want to purchase this access? Okay, in the event we don't own one, we'll identify a piece of land to make a good access. Okay, well, I don't know. So, okay, if you don't know if you're going to purchase it or improve it, why would you spend $15,000 on producing surveys and conceptual plans and all that? See what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I'm not criticizing, the Walton Dunes situation seems on the surface to be clear. I mean, you've got a nice beach parcel there, it's a nice sized one. I think there's a real strong argument for why it needs to be developed, that there's smart development and then there's development. And by making sure that the proper site survey, let's call it, which is pieces of traffic study, topography, parking, whatever things go in, when you've got all that and you've got it very current, then it allows you to do smart development. And that's just, and I'm not saying people haven't, in 2012 that may have all been totally accurate. It's just now it's 2016 and it's changed. And so
should the county be held to different standards than a private developer?
Yeah.
We should.
Well, certainly they should set the example, in my opinion, if you
What
want.
I'm saying is, the person bought that, the private developer bought that land in 2010. And they had all that work done and got a development order to do it. And then the market wasn't there to build a, let's just say a 4-story condo right there, because it couldn't be built there. Okay? And they held the land, they were able to tow the note, and then they were able to get the extensions of the development order. And in 2016, they decided to do it. Should they have to go back through all that again? No, the county won't require them to do that. They allow them to build with the information that they had back then. That was the case of the V restaurant down there.
Well, then that may be a whole nother topic of.
Well, that's where we are with this right now. Is that you don't do the traffic concurrency and all that until you apply for your development order. Well, we can't apply for a development order until we decide first, do we even want to attempt to do that? And so that's where we were back in 2012, and it was decided at that time because we went and did some work on it, and then for whatever reason they decided not to do it. I think it was because we didn't get a grant we were looking for with the initial BB money, and there was a lot of opposition there, and it was an election year.
Well, I wasn't sure why they didn't do it.
We first did sketches on that one back in the 90s.
Well, and like I said, I really am not saying that there shouldn't be one there at all. I'm just, there are a lot of things. It's not, they're different subjects than what we would address here. But let's face it, the situation with developers is another good example of some of the things that happen that need some better processes. And I can just use one example from someplace we've lived before, where if you went to get approvals to do a building, you were required to start within a year. If you didn't start within a year and develop to the plan that you presented, and you had a finite time to finish too, you weren't, I don't remember if it was 3 or 4 years, but it was finite. And so if you got a development order and then you put it aside for 4 or 5 years, you got to modify.
We have those same restrictions here.
And
It's
so,
a 1-year development order, and it can be extended to 2 years with a written application.
But some of those regulations were waived during the downturn of the economy.
The state actually waived those.
So what we're getting at is back to the original question, is how do you start the process?
Sure.
Well, if you own the land, and you do what we're doing, let's have a public workshop. We actually had those public workshops already. Back in June of 2014, we had what's called the Neighborhood Beach Access Initiative, and that one was included in it. We had a public workshop, we explained all about it, the individual projects, You remember? Tops of the hill
I was there.
was carved out.
Yeah, I remember all the people that showed up from Walton Dunes and,
So what we were doing on the 12th, or April 12th, was a continuation of the 12-2 meeting, where it moved forward from the TDC to the BCC. On February 10th, 2015, it got removed during additions and deletions. And so that's where I was picking up from. So, we're actually following the course that we have mapped out. We just had a year and 2 months difference in between when we kind of put it on hold and we started again. But, I guess where I failed on the April 12th BCC meeting was, let's schedule a workshop. Because it's always our intention as TDC to hold workshops when we're developing these unapproved beach accesses, just like we do with Thompson. So I understand where you're coming from.
I was gonna say that, the TDC does workshops, public workshops, developers don't do public workshops, it's just
Unless mandated.
what you get.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a process moving forward, We only have a few of these pieces of property that we own that are undeveloped. And in the future, anything we buy new, when we buy it is when we'll start that process of, we're going to develop this into a neighborhood beach access or a regional beach access. And we recently purchased 2 pieces of property, down at Inlet Beach and one at Lakewood on the western side of the lake. One will be an increase of the beach access at Inlet Beach. We're not going to increase the drive-on area, but we'll increase that park, so to speak. And then the one at Eastern Lake, hopefully will be the start of acquiring that property in the outfall. It's the west side of the outfall. It doesn't give us access. We have access to our existing beach access we have right there. It's called the Walton County Port Authority at the end of Gulf Drive. So it attaches to that, and that's a continuation of that beach access. But, as we go through this collision of customary use and private property rights exercise, we're going to have to public beach. We don't know what the outcome's going to be with that, but right now, the people north of 30A and the day trippers that come down don't have a beach to go to. And so we got to have a public beach somewhere, and that means buying beach accesses. Hopefully. Unfortunately, they're very expensive.
And we'll talk about the Bill Place parcel there.
Now, that developer's got a long-term lease. He appears to be moving forward with a development order to put a restaurant on there. So, but the guy knows and owns it. If in the event he decides to sell it, the restaurant doesn't work out for whatever reason, he knows we want it. So, and he seems like he wants to sell it for a common good, but he also wants to get.
Of course, yeah.
So,
When they know the county's buying, the
Yeah.
price goes up.
okay.
Any more business? Any public comments? Okay, meeting's adjourned.
Appreciate everybody. Make sure those two all have to go on.